about you, but there's something about those gray rental walls that makes me physically nauseous. When we moved into our rental, I had to get really creative with spicing up the space without making it impossible to fix when we moved out. I entertained both peel and stick wallpaper and paint, and I wanted to share with you my experience, how it turned out, and what I would do differently. Side note, I'm not a professional painter, designer, decorator. I am a DIYer, and honestly, even that's generous. If you're a beginner too, I'm right there with you. The first one, grown-up Grape for the master bedroom. I knew that while we were fixing up the house, especially right when we moved in, that I needed at least one room that would be kind of the calming oasis while the others were getting fixed up. I wanted it to be the master bedroom. That meant getting rid of the dark gray walls and switching it up with something more expressive. I knew it would be a bit of a process because of the higher cathedral ceiling, so I camped out with a fan by the window. I bought a ladder, especially knowing I'd be painting more rooms, and turned on my favorite episodes of New Girl to keep me company. I did try to use painter's tape, but like every wall painting project I've had thus far, I feverishly ripped it off after it seeped through the molding. I still honestly don't know how to use it, and not sure if I ever will learn. This color is absolutely beautiful. It was the perfect deep and rich tone that I wanted, especially since I didn't actually go into Lowe's to look at it. I was just looking on my computer screen. You know how those can be pretty finicky. And with basically 3 windows in this room, which would be 2 windows in the bedroom and 1 coming straight from the master bathroom, it really just had the perfect amount of light that was needed in it to make it just dark enough to be cozy, but not so dark that it made the room sink into itself. The paint itself was relatively easy to get on. Basically, it took about 2 layers. It would have been perfect if I hadn't underestimated the amount of paint I needed. I purchased 1 can, but I ended up needing 2. And I screwed up and got 2 different finishes. One of them was the Ovation Plus Flat, and the other was the Reserve Plus, which caused some pretty noticeable streak lines. The things that I changed, honestly nothing except my own user error. I absolutely love this color, and I think it was the perfect tone for the cozy fairy core bedroom that I really wanted. 10 out of 10, highly recommend. So much better than that dark gray that it was before that made me physically upset. If I were to recommend anything, it would be to make sure you get the same finishes and overestimate on paint a little bit, even if it's just getting a can and like a little sample size. Also, if you're dealing with cathedral ceilings, don't underestimate how tall you'll need to stand up on that ladder. I know I was trying really hard to stay on some of the bottom like rungs, I don't know if that's the word. I knew I needed a spot where I like just walked all the way up. So if you need to get a spotter, like I did gymnastics, so I like have probably a little bit more overconfident than I should really be. But if you feel like you need a spotter, definitely get that. Number 2 was the green Dimoon peel and stick for the kitchen. I think that's how you say it. This was an Amazon peel and stick. I basically ordered like 5 or 6 different colors so I could figure out which one I really wanted, especially since sometimes the colors on Amazon, you just really never know. If I were painting, I would have done a swatch. And honestly, I kind of regret not painting the kitchen because it would have been so much easier and more seamless than what ended up happening. The decision on the color itself was pretty easy because the rest of the colors were just a little too light for my taste. There was like a lighter purple, lighter pink, but it wasn't deep enough for me. It was kind of like the baby blue, the baby pink, the purple. So I went ahead and ordered a few rolls of the deeper green after I had all those samples because that one was my favorite. And of course, just like the bedroom, I underestimated and ran out. So I ordered more, and well, you can see what happened. I love the different color options that you can pick from. At least at the time when I ordered, there were greens, blues, and pinks. So if you're not into paying a whole lot for expensive peel and stick, because they can get really pricey because you're in a rental or just don't want to break the bank, it's a great option. What I changed, pretty evident, the color change on the rolls. This thing literally faded in the middle of the roll and was a completely different color. So I don't know if like it's an ink thing or a printer thing, but I feel like this was one of those you had one job moments that this peel and stick just fell completely short. If you're ordering this and trying to stay cost effective, I highly recommend getting all of the rolls together. Although honestly, I can't even guarantee that that means the colors won't fade either. Thankfully, Amazon is pretty forgiving about faulty orders, so I was able to get a bit of a refund because of it without having to send it back. I also had a really hard time cutting and shaving the peel and stick around lots of angles that the kitchen had, which is again why I feel like I would have rather just painted it and then painted it back. There's just the shelves, the windows, the outlet. Again, if you are doing a rental and you are considering possibly painting, I don't know, know, I'd recommend just like slapping on your favorite TV show and going for that. The next one is the Dimoon Floral Peel and Stick for the downstairs bathroom. I always knew that I wanted to add something to this bathroom. It's an easy way to add a pop of color to the entranceway in a really subtle way, especially around all the gray. I feel like I just rhymed with like 3 words. I didn't want all of that repainting to be a big pain when we were leaving. So I ended up grabbing the same brand as the kitchen. I know, right? Like, why after the ombre color fiasco? But still, I thought to myself, well, what could happen? It's a pattern. It can't really fade, right? And if it does, it wouldn't be that noticeable. And it's true. It didn't fade, but it still has its unique moments in and of itself, as you can see. I'm honestly really impressed at how adorable this design was, especially for being an affordable peel and stick from Amazon. At the time of looking for peel and stick wallpapers, it was really hard to find a pattern that was cute and also like not seen all over socials and Pinterest. I wanted something unique. So I was really happy with this pattern. Things that I would change, it being stickier. I was really trying to figure out if the lack of sticking was like a user error, or I don't know, the fact that it was in a bathroom, but there's no shower in it. But yeah, it just will not stay up even when my self-proclaimed ombre kitchen peel and stick would, which is crazy because that peel and stick, you would think because of the colors, it's just gonna be awful all around, but at least that thing's sticking. What I would recommend, I guess, having a backup plan if this one doesn't quite stick like it did for me. If you like this pattern enough, maybe there's some sort of temporary wall stick or something that'll serve as a backdrop to keep this up, especially if you're not looking to paint your rental. I wouldn't trust it 100% for standing the test of stick in a home that, again, I could just paint. Next up, we have the Benjamin Moore Purple Hyacinth for the studio/office, which is where I am right now. This room got painted a few times. So initially this room was this green color that I wasn't a huge fan of. Since it's right off the front entrance, it was initially the dining room, so I knew I had to be creative with how I designed it and laid it out to make it functional enough as an office, not just because it would be where I was working most days, but because it's one of the first things people will see when they walk into the house. I didn't really want to mess with the hallways or the entry walls. I wanted some color to bounce off of it so it didn't feel so enveloped in gray. We'd spoken to the landlord and she didn't want us to paint anything any color, which was just not going to happen. But we agreed that if we painted this room white, then we could keep it. We wouldn't have to repaint it. So for the sake of trying to keep things simple as usual, I tried out the white and I honestly immediately regretted it. Like, the walls felt so flat, and the fact that the light was already so strong in the mornings just made it way too bright when I was working. I wanted something expressive, I wanted something warm, and this was just not it. I painted over my new paint job a few months later. The idea of it hurt, but honestly it was so worth it. It is one of my favorite colors to this date. What I love, honestly, everything about this color, like I love what it looks like in the mornings, what it looks like at night. I love how it blends with the white rug, which I got on Facebook Marketplace. And I love how it looks with the antique and the wood. Like, it's just everything I could ask for in a paint color, and I have no regrets at all. I feel like it reflects everything about my personality. It's like super fairy core, and I love it so much. What I changed? Nothing. Honestly, the process, like, I spent half a day painting this room and it was wonderful. Again, just like binge new girl. I did about 2 layers. I got 2 cans this time. I didn't underestimate. And I didn't even get the most expensive type. But there is something though about this room that I changed a lot, and that was where the desk was and ultimately where everything else lived around it. I really found that it was such a challenge to make a former dining room into an office because it has 2 entrances. And if you're approaching it from kind of a feng shui perspective like I like to do, then it was so hard for me to figure out where to put this desk. In feng shui, you want to make sure that the desk is not up against a window. You need to make sure it's facing both entrances. And when there's 2 entrances in a room, there was really no other place I could put this other than in the middle of the room, which ate up a lot of it. And except the desk is facing the middle of the room, in front of the windows, there's like a huge glare from the windows. There's not really one perfect place to put the desk. Literally just last week, I moved this room around again. I've moved it around probably 10 times, but that has nothing to do with the paint. The paint honestly saves it. If you're a little hesitant about the color, try using it on like an old thrift find that makes sense to see if you like it first. So maybe something small or a larger piece of furniture if you're feeling bold. The next one is the Sherwin Expressive Plum for the living room. I knew this room couldn't be gray, especially because it was supposed to be cozy and relaxing. I mean, it's a living room, you are hanging out, you're watching TV. I initially tried a white peel and stick wallpaper from Amazon, immediately regretted it. Don't we see a pattern here? It was just so bright. It's like, I don't know, everyone loves white walls right now. I don't know, I felt really overwhelmed by like the brightly shaded paper, and I didn't feel cozy at all. What's probably the funniest part about this room is that I painted this big purple arch around the TV to try to distract from the gray walls. Like, look, I'm just trying all these awful shortcuts. I hope you learn from my mistakes. Just don't do shortcuts. Take the time to actually paint. I'm not a mathematician, I couldn't do the arch, and it just looked horrible. I figured it was gonna be this really cool design. It would kind of distract away from the gray. No. So then basically what happened is I painted this awful arch. I got word that our landlord was coming to check in on the place. So I sprinted over to Lowe's to find some temporary white paint to cover it up. And it was just a mess. Like it was just a disaster. So as soon as the landlord did their thing, I literally ripped the peel and stick down a few weeks after, covered up that awful arch, and I found a color that I've been dreaming of ever since I saw it somewhere online, Expressive Plum. This was the exact color I was looking for in the living room. It was warm. It almost had a little bit of gray in it. Like it wasn't too deep. It wasn't too bright. I just felt like I could sink into this room for hours and not feel like I had to be anywhere. As usual during paint projects, I spent the day with a spotlight on the wall, the windows open, and cracking up at Winston puzzling. What I loved, this paint color, it's a dream. I'd recommend it for anyone who has a fairy core, dark academia, cottagecore vibe, moody, who isn't afraid of a little bit of color, especially in a main room. I know this kind of looks dark, but if you have enough light up against it, it really shows the beautiful low lights in the color, and it's perfect because we have 3 windows. We were already thankfully pretty set on the amount of light that would come into the space. In fact, we sometimes have to draw the shades because in the spring and summer it gets so hot, but it's a great problem to have, and I wouldn't trade it for having fewer windows at all. There's nothing I change about the paint itself. As far as the painting process, I was still trying to figure out how to not get the darker paint on the popcorn ceilings and the molding, because to this day, I have not mastered using painter's tape. Other than that, I'll grab a bright white to cover my little faux pas when we move out and when I paint the room back to another color. One thing that was a user error was that I wasn't prepared for just how long it would take me to paint this room. I figured since there's only 3 walls, like it'd only take 3/4 of the time. I don't know where my math was coming from, but ultimately I had to give myself at least 6 or 7 hours to get this room painted, and I started a little too late in the day. It was really dark when I was done, and I had to have the spotlight and hope that the paint looked good. Give yourself a lot of time for those bigger rooms. You might not think that it's a lot in there, but consider not only the length of the walls, but the height of the ceiling compared to another room you've painted. Make sure you have good ventilation, because I got myself woozy by not having it and fainted. I'd also recommend doing this on a weekend, again, starting a little bit earlier in the mornings, just so it's not super stressful. Like the last thing you want is to have to paint and then like worry that the landlord's gonna come, or just do it on a day that you don't have to do anything. You could relax, you could take a 2-hour break and eat food, let it dry before the other layer. Just make it chill, make it cozy. We're all about cozy. We're all about calm here. By the time I was done painting this particular one, it was like 10 or 11 p.m. First of all, that's past my bedtime. Second of all, needed the spotlight on the walls to make sure I wasn't missing anything. Definitely see some wonky streaks from that, but you live and you learn, right? And I hope you're learning from it. Bonus! Spoonflowers Peacock Garden. This is a wallpaper, it's a peel and stick that I put on these little lockers on the opposite side of our bed, and I love it so much. I love it. It brings the room together so much. It's so whimsical, it's so magical and fairy, and I love it. All the links to purchase these are going to be in the description if you want to check them out, including this one. If you're looking to get some inspiration for some paint colors or some tips from a not so great DIYer like myself, I hope this gave you a little bit of inspiration on how to get started, and ultimately how to laugh at yourself if you do it a little wrong. There really isn't a wrong, it's just a super beginner's version. So if you're looking for more videos about my creative lifestyle, feel free to check out my newest video right here. I'll see you next time.